Hi, guys. It is such a sleepy Sunday. Thank you for being here. I know it's kind of weird to go to panels on a Sunday because everything's ending, and yeah, so I appreciate you being here. My name is Alexis Tipton. A little bit about me. I have been a voice actress for FUNimation Entertainment for the past 10 years and some change. I just had my 10-year anniversary in November. Thank you. I'm like, oh, is this what it's like when people like ask you how old your child is or something, and you're like, it's 17 months. Like, why do people do that? Just say a year and a half. So I've been a voice actor for about 10 years. I've done mostly anime voiceover, but I also do commercial voiceover, industrial voiceover. I'm also an on-camera actress. I have been for about the past 5 or 6 years. I've been a theater actress since I was a very small one. Probably, I think kindergarten was my first time on stage. And I'm also an ADR director for anime. So if anyone, this is just a generic, general Q&A. You can ask me about any of that stuff. If you want to talk about specific shows, that's what I'm here for. But if you also have questions about acting or directing or anything like that, if you're trying to become a professional creative, as I call it, I would love to help you on that journey in any way I can. So I will open it up to you guys now. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I remember watching behind the scenes video of you voicing the character Masamune from
Oh, yes.
And it's the scene like when she's filling up Deku.
Uh-huh,
just
yeah.
trying to get his measurements. And the ADR director, Kaoru Kamiya, says to you to tone it down a notch, like be less gremlin.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stuck with me. Like when you're in a booth for like however many hours, and it's just the same thing. Like, what are the more creative descriptors that like ADR directors have said to you? It's like, oh, be less this and more like this.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the gremlin thing was that was definitely like for that character. That no, sometimes she would tell me to be more gremlin, but that was just kind of the kind of like that part of the voice that just became the gremlin voice. I think she crowned that phrase. I've had directors like if we were doing battle scenes or like my character got hurt and it was like this really like, you know, this moment when she gets hurt, they're like putting a lot of budget into this like animation, and so it's like a really big deal, and so the sound that comes out has to like, you know, reflect what we're seeing as the audience. I've had some directors get really descriptive with me, like to try to bring out weird noises or like painful noises, because that's the thing. I've realized this as a director. We spend so much time, directors in general spend so much time analyzing and over-analyzing what it would sound like to go through these really traumatic things that hopefully none of us will ever encounter or endure. Like, what sound do you make when you get shot in the head? Like, what sound, like, is it like a guttural sound? Do you not really make a sound at all because it like just goes straight to the brain? Like, I don't, like, these are the types of things I've had to think about. And other directors have had to think about. So the first example that came to mind was in Blood Sea. Saya is in a battle with an elder baron, I forget which one, somewhere, and she's already like really beaten up, she's really struggling, and I believe this elder baron was either really big or could fly or something, but she gets thrown to the ground from like a really high point, and her back is already like really scratched up, and there's like blood everywhere, and she's not in good shape, so this blow is like bad. And so she like hits the ground and like rolls around, and the sound that I produced was not good enough. And so Jerry Jewell, who was the director, said, okay, I want to do that again, but I need you to imagine like the worst sunburn you've ever had on your back. Like the worst, like you like putting clothes on is a chore because fabric touching it is so bad. We've all had a really bad sunburn, right? So imagine that, then imagine someone takes your back and pushes you into broken glass. What sound do you think you would make in that situation? And then imagine that glass creates cuts and someone puts rocks and lemon juice in it. So you got the sunburn and you got the scratches and the open wounds. Yeah, this is like, so anytime we have a graphic show, this is what happens. So that sound that came out was the result of that direction. I had another director when we were doing Sekirei. My character Musubi is in a battle and she gets, I think, punched in the stomach or something, but she like spits up a bunch of blood, and it's kind of one of the more graphic. It's towards the end, so it's kind of, you know, one of the climactic battle scenes, and me making a sound like, I've been, it's a mixture between like, okay, you've been punched in the stomach, so that's a very hollow sound, but then there's also liquid involved. It wasn't wet enough for the director, so he had me take water and like spit it out like onto the floor to achieve that noise. So it was just really strange. Directors get really innovative sometimes. I'm trying to think of other stuff. I've also had some directors. It's much easier, and this goes for theater, this goes for film, like this is just acting in general. It's much easier for directors to pull you back, like if you're too much, than to get you to go further. So when in doubt energetically, it's always good to give them a 12, and then maybe they dial you back to like an 8. But if they need an 8 and you're only giving them a 3, it's much harder to get you to that 8. So I've had a lot of directors be like, oh, okay, like use numbers or use things like that. So yeah, and I believe that's the main difference between, is your director also an actor, or are they coming from a more, logical place? Like, were they previously an engineer, or were they, have they never really done acting? Because a director who has acted knows how to very viscerally communicate with actors. So yeah, I've gotten some very colorful directions, but they work. And me, when I'm directing, I direct in circumstance, which is where I make up. And this is an on-camera technique that's just a philosophy that I is very much a part of my work. Is that if we're doing a scene and I'm not getting what I'm looking for from the actor, I will spin imaginary circumstances for them to try to get what I'm looking for. Like maybe those circumstances aren't actually what's happening, but that's the color that I'm looking for. So I will say something to the effect of, I mean, it bleeds into the scene, but it'll be something like, this man loves you so much. Like, I want you to let it be true that this is the last time you're going to see him. And he loves you. And you love him so much, and you haven't said it. So when you say goodbye, I need that weight, that I'm never going to see you again. How do I sum up my feelings for you in a goodbye? And so that's not what's going on in the scene, but the results are just beautiful, like every single time, and you're making it real for the actor, so then they're able to come from a place of authenticity. So yeah, anyway, there's a very long answer to your question. I apologize. Yeah.
Can you talk about working on commentaries and how it differs from a regular session?
Well, commentaries, when we do commentaries, all we're doing is we're sitting in a booth like we would be if we were recording, and we've got our headphones on and there's a microphone, but there's usually several people in there at a time, which is unusual for recording. Normally we're by ourselves, and sometimes we'll preview the episode that we're commentating on, because usually by the time this comes around it's for DVD, so it could be 6 months to a year since we actually recorded it. So most of us have no idea what's going on anymore because we've mentally moved on. So sometimes we'll preview the episode, and sometimes the director has a very definite idea of how they want the commentary to go. Sometimes they'll say, I'm going to be in this commentary with you, and I'm going to kind of make it an interview, and then we'll just have the animation on in the background. Sometimes the director won't be in the booth, but we'll have a screen in there that they'll type things on. So it's like, hey, talk about that. Like I want to talk about this thing. Hit this point. And sometimes it's a free-for-all. So we're not encouraged, or we're encouraged to avoid like riffing on the episode. Like they don't want us to make fun of it, because that's more of like a licensor thing. They get kind of mad when we do that. But just a lot of times we'll sit down and be like, what is it you guys want to talk about? Did something really interesting happen during this dub process that you want to hit on? Or is this an additional season of a show that was like a long time coming? Like maybe we can talk about that. Or maybe there's like a newer actor in this episode, and we can talk about like how much we love their performance, and kind of get their name out there a little bit and advertise for them. But mostly it's just kind of like, yeah, let's revisit this and talk about it, and it's just kind of a free-for-all sometimes, which is why some of them are more bizarre than others, but it's like herding cats sometimes. But yeah. Yeah, right here.
So what was it like working on the show Sakura? Because I love your work.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I love that show so much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the you know, I love me a gritty drama. I love me like a magical girl show. I love like the fantasy based shows. Like those are really fun, and there's a definite place for them. But I also just really, really love slice of life shows because it's just a different style of acting. A lot of times it's more conversational, and because everything that's happening could actually happen in real life, it's great to just go in and just have a conversation with even if it's like, you know, even if I'm the first person to record, just like react off the animation and just talk, because stylistically the acting can get kind of, you know, it gets bigger sometimes depending on the type of genre you're dubbing. And so the slice of life shows are just, they're just relaxing, even when they're stressful, like they're relaxing. And especially when they come about during a season where we've got all these like really like crazy, like dramatic, like bloody, like you know, hardcore gritty shows happening. It's nice to go into a booth and be like, oh, now we're gonna go to Manayama. And they're going through stresses of their own, but it's like very human stress, like it's relatable stress. So, and PA Works just does a beautiful job with everything they produce. And Caitlin Glass was the director, so it's always just an absolute joy to work with her. She's been my mentor in a lot of ways throughout my journey. So anytime I get to return to her booth and act for her, it's always a joy. So and Yoshino was just so important to me because she reminds me of myself when I was 20. Like I was so like that when I was her age, and so that was really fun too. But yeah, thank you for watching it.
I was going to ask, what do you think your most challenging but rewarding role was?
Challenging but rewarding. Reina in real life was a big one for me. Not to get too personal, but I was going through a really rough time when we recorded that show. That was like arguably one of the worst years of my life for various reasons. And I was not doing well as a person. Again, I won't get too personal, but it was a very dark time in my life. And getting to go in and record for Reina. By the way, if anyone hasn't seen real life, if you've ever struggled with depression, if you've ever struggled with feeling like you don't belong, if you've ever struggled with feeling like, God, I have so many regrets, I wish I could go back and like do something over again. If you ever struggle with, you know, I'm not really sure what's important, I don't know what my priorities are, that is such a cathartic show. It is so good. And again, more of a slice of life, so very conversational acting. And we recorded that show as part of the night session at FUNimation, which means that like pretty much everybody except the booths that were running were at home. Like, so it was very quiet, and they turn a bunch of the lights off, so it's very like serene in there at night because you don't have the hustle bustle of all the other FUNimation departments. And I could just go in and like with no questions asked, just let out all my frustrations in the booth, which was also very hard because it's very vulnerable to do that. And very, you know, wow, Alexis, you were actually crying in the booth. Like, are they going to ask me questions about that? Are they going to like probe and like ask me what's wrong? And like, why was I actually crying? And so it's very vulnerable and scary, but it was a very safe place. And Reina is a character, without giving too much away, she definitely has an arc. But she's not very likable in the beginning. And she's struggling with deep depression, self-hatred, feeling like she doesn't belong, and just is just really awful to people. Like, her response to her own depression is pushing people away and saying, I don't need you, like, get away from me, I don't need you, I hate you, just really being terrible. And her friends, though, never give up on her. Like, they know that there's something wrong, and no matter how horrible she is to them, they never give up on her. And so it's beautiful, and she eventually comes around. But she makes a lot of mistakes. Her jealousy is a big thing. Trying to sabotage people in these really unkind ways, and just a lot of darkness in her character. And so it was really, and my what I was going through was different, but at the core it was the same. It was this inability to cope with my own emotions. And so being able to go in and just like yell at people, like in the booth, you know, obviously not actually yelling at anybody, but, and just being able to let that out was extremely cathartic, but also very challenging because it was scary. I hadn't played anybody that I resonated with that much at the time. So she was very challenging, but very rewarding. I feel like she really helped me through that time. And my director, Jeremy Inman, was just wonderful. Another one that was kind of along that same vein was Kaguri in Steins Gate Zero, which is the second season of Steins Gate that came out after like 7 years after the first one came out. That was I have been emotional in the booth, and I have felt genuine emotion in the booth, but that was the first time I have ever like lost my mind crying, like just sobbing, full breakdown, which as an actor, like that, it sounds terrible, but that's actually like, oh my God, that's like an accolade in the acting world. Like if you're able to legitimately break down, and that sounds so like masochistic, but because a lot of times it's really hard to genuinely cry, especially in a very fast-paced environment where like we got to get it done and all this is happening out of context, and I don't have time to like get into this, or I don't have anyone here to connect with, like and so it gets like stuck and you like can't let it out. But that was another time when it was not cathartic in the same ways that Reina was cathartic, but she's talking about her mother, not to give too much away, but she's talking about her mother that she's been trying to find for like the whole series. And it just made me think of my family and like what would I do if I didn't have my family. And so then just and at the time a family member was having health problems that were really scary, and so I had been thinking about like, what if I lose this person? And so that became cathartic in and of itself, and so that was extremely rewarding as well. But yeah, anyone who says that like anime is shallow doesn't know what they're talking about, because there are so many extremely deep characters, deep situations that can make people, whether you're watching it or voicing it, feel extremely deeply, and that's just a very beautiful thing. So yeah.
What's your tip for aspiring voice actors for creating like character voices and stuff?
Oh, good question. Thank you for being specific. That's awesome. So tips for my tips, and everyone has different suggestions. So I would ask that question of as many people as you can, because they'll probably give you slightly different information. It's all correct. None of it's wrong. It's just different. Something that I always encourage people to do is, first and foremost, study acting, because that will definitely help in more ways than you know, and it is a requirement of the job. But the big thing in voice acting is they're not looking for impressions. They're not looking for, oh, I can do a really good Yoda impression. I can do a really good Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. I can do, like, those already exist. Yeah, exactly. And that's good stuff to have in your back pocket in case a director's like, I really want this to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, give me your best Arnold Schwarzenegger, because we can't actually get Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's good to have in your back pocket, but when you're trying to get your foot in the door, I would avoid it. But what those impressions are good for is giving you a starting place. So take that whatever impression, like maybe it's like a Nicolas Cage impression, I don't know, Keanu Reeves, pick somebody that has like kind of an iconic voice. And okay, so do that, and then, okay, what happened, like Yoda, what happens if I take the out of it? Like, what does that sound like? What happens if I keep it intact, but I up the pitch a bit? What happens if I lower the pitch? What happens if I give him a British accent? What happens? So use those impressions as a starting point, and then use it to like modulate your voice. Feel where that's resting in your vocal cords, and then be like, okay, if I can do this, what else can I do in this part? Because it's all range. I would definitely suggest studying singing. It's another thing to have, another good skill to have in your back pocket. But what it also teaches you is how to take care of your voice, how to modulate your voice. It also stretches your range. So if you are trying to do lower pitched characters, singing will help you learn how to do that safely without hurting yourself. Read out loud, like just read books, like read your favorite book out loud, and when a character comes up, assign them a voice, and then see if you can maintain that voice for a couple chapters. I also highly, 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 highly encourage do not hang on to voices that hurt you. Because if you put a voice on your demo and a director loves it, and then they bring you in and they're like, cool, you got to do this for 3 hours. And you're like, oh, I couldn't do it. I could barely do it for the 5 seconds on my demo. Like, not a good look. And it's also just not healthy or safe for your vocal cords. So protect this at all costs. So yeah, I think that's a good start. Some place to start. And the best thing about that is you can just do that at home. Like, you don't have to do that. And this is an amazing device. Record yourself. I've booked auditions on this thing. It's a great quality microphone for what it is. And get used to the sound of your voice. Play with the sound of your voice. Send it to friends and say, hey, does this sound cool to you? Give me some feedback. So, your phone is your friend. Just don't be addicted to it, because that's a problem. Jeez, was there a velociraptor? Okay. Zombie apocalypse. It's okay, we're safe. We're not safe. Everybody run. I know, I'm so curious, sorry. Anyway, who else has a question? Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say first off, I thought you were very into Steins Gate Zero.
Thank you, thank you.
So I was wondering, since you mentioned how long it was since the original, and since you were like a brand new character coming into it, and also since that series is pretty well known, I was wondering, do you ever get any sort of any like nervousness knowing on how you will be received?
Oh, I get more nervousness. Well, to answer your question first, I knew that was a really popular show, and that it was it was sort of like a cult classic, you know, like, and it had been so long since the first season. And J. Michael Tatum, who voices the main character, is a really dear friend of mine, and I had heard him talk about it so much. Like, that's like his passion project. Like, he just loved that show so much. So when it came back around, he was like, you know, so over the moon excited. And there was a little bit of oh my gosh, like, I've heard so much about this show. Like, I'm so excited to be a part of this universe. Where I feel the most apprehension, though, is when I have to do voice matches, because that's a thing. Which kind of goes back to my point earlier about impressions, or being able to voice match or mimic is a good skill to have in your back pocket, because I've voice matched Laura Bailey a few times on a few legacy characters that she had to retire. That is the most stressful thing I've ever done, and the most apprehension I've ever felt, because I'm like, oh, Dragon Ball's been around since I was a kid. It's not like, oh, she had to drop out and the show just started. Like, no, this is my childhood coming full circle. Like, this is crazy. So that is what causes me anxiety. Joining popular television show or popular anime, like as a character that I am originating in English, is exciting. And sometimes it's like, oh, I know people feel really strongly about this show. I hope they like me or whatever. But I also learned a long time ago that one of the worst things you can do as an actor is worry about what people think. That's just kind of a good general human being thing to feel. Because that's the thing. There's this great Wayne Dyer quote that is, what other people think of me is none of my business. So of course I want to do a good job, and of course I want to do, especially if it's a voice match, I want to do the character justice, and I want people to enjoy my performance regardless of the circumstances. But I've seen things I don't like, you know, and it's like, you just move on. Like, and it's honestly, at the end of the day, of course I care about what people think, and I want them to enjoy it, and I'm so happy when people have nice things to say, but my duty is to the director. You know, I'm doing what the director has instructed me to do. And there have been times where I have thought, oh God, I wish I could have said that differently, or I wish, like, my vision of this is different than the director's, but my vision doesn't matter. You know, like, I'm satisfying, because on that project, the director is my boss. And so if I'm giving them what they want, that's all I have control over. So it's foolish to try to worry about things that I don't have control over, you know? So. Anybody else? Yeah.
How much harder do you think it is to be a successful actor as an introvert versus an extrovert?
Oh, wow. Getting philosophical up in here. I have a slightly unique advantage because I consider myself an ambivert. So I I lean more towards introverted, but I do also have extroverted qualities. So ambivert just means you can swing both. I think, God, I've never thought about that before. I think that there are strengths and weaknesses on both ends when you want to become an actor, a professional actor. If you're too extroverted, you're obnoxious, you know? But if you're too introverted, you're never going to connect with people. And so much of this industry is being able to connect with people, being able to connect with people that enjoy your work and support your work, being able to connect with your director, being able to connect with your fellow actors, because networking in a way in and of itself is connection. Like that doesn't mean that I'm going to be best friends with someone, you know, it might just be a business relationship, but there does have to be a connection there. And so much of this industry is, especially now that it's so fast paced and we're kind of getting away from auditions, directors want to hire people that they enjoy being around. And so if you feel closed off, it's hard to reach you. I've worked as a director. I've worked with a few actors where I was like, they're really good, but I can't reach them. They're not going to respond to the way I direct. I'm not going to be able to get what I'm looking for out of them because they are so energetically closed off. They're fighting me. They won't let me in. And acting is vulnerable. It has to be vulnerable because if it's not vulnerable, it's self-indulgent. If all you want to do is get up on a stage and be clapped for, that's self-indulgent. And that is not, that is the wrong way to be an actor, if you ask me. I feel very, very strongly about that. Acting must be selfless and acting must be vulnerable. The reason that we are so drawn as an audience to media, whatever it is, whether it's live theater, whether it's film, whether it's anime, whether it's ballet, is because there are people putting themselves out there in ways that we are afraid to. And so it's very voyeuristic in that way. It's, oh, I want to go see this person act on stage because I could never do that. So I'm going to live vicariously through them. And then even if you are able to be vulnerable, like I love going to live performance and movies and stuff, and it's watching people being so daring, and it's like, I know I could do that eventually, but like I have it within myself to do that, but I'm not doing it right now. They are. And it's great to take a break from me being vulnerable and getting to watch someone else do it. So, I mean, even just sitting up on this stage in front of you is extremely vulnerable because you're all staring at me and I don't know what you're going to ask me. And like, it's very, very vulnerable, right? And as human beings, especially this, you know, in this day and age, we are so closed off because of technology and because like connection is scary. Like, why would I connect with you when I can just connect with you this way? Like, why, oh, I just sent you a text message and I never have to look you in the eye. But that's still vulnerable because, you know, when you get that ... they read my message and they haven't responded yet, and then the ... go away and you're like, they hate me. Like, you know, that's vulnerable too. So being an extrovert and being an introvert, both have strengths, both have weaknesses, but really what it boils down to is how vulnerable are you willing to be? Being extroverted isn't a bad thing. Being introverted isn't a bad thing. Being both isn't a bad thing. It's just, how can you work with your own limitations? Like, I love coming to conventions. I love talking to you guys. I love interacting. That's the extroverted side of me. But I need to be alone to recharge. So that's the introverted part of me. I will go back to my hotel room and like sleep this off. You know, I'm enjoying this, but I do get worn out, like when I'm around people a lot. And that's the introverted quality. So you can work with both. It's just finding out what are your boundaries, what is more important to you, and how can you work within those limitations and boundaries that makes you comfortable, where you can be your best self. So I have very long answers, guys. I'm sorry. It's your fault for asking good questions. Yeah.
I was wondering, what was it like working on Sakura Quest?
Sakura Quest was so much fun. We kind of talked about it a little earlier when she asked about it. But yeah, it was so much fun. Slice of life, one of my favorites. Like, I wish we could do it again. I love that show. I hope we get more. That'd be fun. I want to see what happens to Yoshino. Someone, yeah, right here.
So, I've always wondered, being curious, what's like some of the main differences or difficulties between working with like theater and voice acting? Because I did theater in school, and I distinctly remember the idea of like, oh, if I ever have problems with things, I literally can go to I can work off of the other actors.
Right.
Whereas in voice acting, you're just in a booth, but yet there's always this thought of like watching it, then what that solo voice or like is what part of that is really true? Like do you do kind of those like
It def
some other people, or is it just the director?
Yeah, it 90% of the time it's just one person in the booth. It's like me with my microphone and my script screen and my animation screen, and then there's a wall, and then it's the director and the engineer. Occasionally we'll do things called WALA sessions, which is a abbreviated term that stands for with all actors, and it's like between 3 and 5 actors in a booth together, and it's just doing like background noises, like, oh, the main characters are walking through this outdoor festival and there's all these people talking in the background, and so it's unscripted, it's just people, it's improv, it's just people chattering in the background, and you can't even really discern what anyone's actually saying. But it is difficult in the booth, and this is why acting experience is so important if you want to be a voice actor, because when you're on stage or when you're on camera, you have a person in front of you that you can feed off of and interact with in real time. And you know, if they're giving you some kind of energy, you can reciprocate or feed off of that and have that influence your choices. In the booth, you don't have that. And sometimes when you're dubbing a conversation between 2 people or more, you may be the first person to record. So you don't even have anyone to listen to have a conversation with. And that's why, you know, the director is so important, because they can kind of walk you through that. But it is difficult. And so if you are not trained to know what to do when that person is removed, it can be very scary. If you are too dependent on having a person there and then that's taken away, like that becomes a crutch, and it's like very, very scary. There is also something to be said for on stage, you can take as much time or as little time as you want saying a line. And that definitely can influence how you deliver your lines. But in the booth, we're bound by this. So there may be lines where I'm like, oh, I wish I could milk that. I wish I could savor that line, but this is going way too fast. Can't do it. Or if you say a line and the director's like, it's too long, we got to shorten it. Immediately you have to go, okay, where can I change the emphasis to make this shorter? And it's like that. It's okay, we're rolling again. Do it again, do something again. Find a way to shorten that. And it may require changing the read entirely. There's also something to be said for physicality. You know, on stage, like you're using your whole body. If you're just standing there delivering your lines and looking at that person, it's not very entertaining. So, you know, you're using your arms and you're walking around and you're making your marks and you're turning all over the place and you're doing all this, and can't do it in the booth. You got to have that internally, and because if I move around, you can't really hear me. You know, the mic and your director's going to hate you. So, not really, but it will ruin the take. If you're off mic, it'll ruin the take. So you have to be able to condense that physicality and feel that, but not leak it out, and also not be, you know, a monkey in a jungle gym. So, so there are a lot of differences. It definitely requires, what is the word I'm looking for? It's this, containment. There we go, containment. Which is also a very powerful stage tool, but that is an entirely different panel. How are we doing on time? Since I've chatted your ears off. Okay, who else has a question? Yeah.
Have you ever been in a role you hated?
A role I hated. I'm always grateful for work. Let me preface it with that. There was a show I was in where I don't know if I hated it. I just didn't really enjoy the process because I never knew what was happening. Like, I never knew what was happening, and my character was very flat. So I'm like, I can't even have fun with her lines. And that show was a show called Heavy Object. I played Melinda, which I hear it's a really good show. I just never knew what was happening. My director did not see fit to tell me. And I was just like, I've never been so in the dark about an experience. I was just like, if the director liked it, I guess it was okay. I just never knew what was going on. So I didn't hate it. Hate is a strong word. I spent most of that show being very confused. So it wasn't as pleasant as it could have been. I guess I'll put it that way. Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
And I think everybody here can agree with that, but thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I was wondering, who are some people you look up to or who would like to meet at an event like this, like a convention?
Oh man. Oh. Well, there's a lot of on-camera people I'd like to meet. I keep telling my booking agent, I'm like, you get me in a con with Tom Hiddleston, I may disappear. Or like he's always like, let me know if anyone tries to, if any other convention agents try to like poach you at these events. I'm like, well, if they're representing Tom Hiddleston, meeting Mark Hamill would be really cool in terms of people who've done a lot of voice work. I'm not as familiar with, I know a lot of LA voice actors, but most of them do anime, and so that's how I've met them. I'd like to meet some I'd love to meet like some Disney voice actors or some, Cartoon Network voice actors, like American cartoon voiceover actors. Gosh, there'd be a lot of people. I was at a convention in Houston a few weekends ago, and Emilia Clarke was there. She was like, we didn't even see her. She was so like sectioned. It would have been really cool to meet her. She had her own green room. Like we were not allowed to like look upon her, but that would have been cool. In terms of people I look up to, there's so many. The first name that came to mind, because I mentioned her earlier, was Caitlin Glass. She has done so much for me in my career. Not only that, but she's just become a very dear friend. I go to her for life advice sometimes. That has nothing to do with acting. But she gave me my first lead role. Not my first role in general, but just my first big role. And she also trained me to be a director. So she's done 2 major things for me in my career. Brina Palencia is another one. Brina taught me so much about singing, which is something confidence-wise, I really, really struggled with for a long time. And has just kind of overall been this like kind of big sister figure in my life. Chris Sabat has been really influential. He did a lot of stuff with obviously with all the Dragon Ball stuff, and I have directed him in a few shows, and so I got to really see him work as an actor, which was really, really, really humbling. It was really, really cool. And just like so many other people. You guys, like, if you're ever nervous about meeting a voice actor at a convention, like, don't be. I have yet to meet somebody that just wasn't like, and I'm sure there are some people out there that are kind of meh, but, and I apologize on their behalf, whoever they are. I hate that sometimes there are people that make fans feel unappreciated, but it has been my experience. Like, I know so many amazing people in this industry that would just love nothing more than to talk to you guys. So if you ever see someone at a convention and you're like, oh gosh, I'm like really nervous and I don't want to go talk to them, they're so amazing. Like, just some really, really awesome people in this industry. And it is a family. Like, I've been in this industry for 10 years and I just feel so, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but like, so #blessed but no, really, but to know just so many wonderful people. So, yeah. Thanks for letting me show some gratitude. I appreciate it. I'm like gushing now. I'm like, all these people I love so much. Oh my God. Anybody else? Yeah, in the back.
When did you voice back in the Trinity for the Facebook series?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was wondering if you do like all the voices or the personality, because she's a lead character.
Yes, and that was another voice match in my career. And so when they were like, yeah, so we want you to take over for this character, and we'll send you some reference files and see if you can do it. I'm like, okay. And then they send me 3 different character reference files, and I was like, what? They're like, well, her name's Platinum the Trinity, so it's actually 3 characters, and we just want to see if you can voice match all 3 of them. And I was like, okay, yeah. But see, I've always had, and this doesn't work with just anybody. It just so happens that Laura Bailey and I just naturally have like similar sounding voices. Like, it's not, and nobody's trying to do anything. That's just how we were born. But I think that's like a fun challenge to be like, yeah, let me hear something and let me like mimic it, because I have a very sensitive ear, and so it's fun to kind of be like, okay, yeah, let me see if I can do this. It's not something I want to do all the time, because I like being able to do my own thing instead of worrying about trying to voice match something that someone else already did. But yeah, it was a fun and very unique challenge, and I was very terrified throughout that entire process, because we had like the Japanese client in the room, and I was just like, please don't, I'm sorry, I'm doing it wrong. Okay, now we're gonna do this one, and now we're gonna do this one. Okay, I'm still stuck in this other voice. Can you just keep playing me clips? So yeah, that was fun. It was interesting. I wish I could encounter more characters like her, because I like the challenge. That'd be fun. Anybody? Yeah.
Are there any lines
Oh gosh, you guys, I am so bad at like thinking of specific lines. I need to write them down because the problem is I'm usually working on like 5 or 6 shows at a time. And then when that show's over, then like it's a new 5 or 6 shows. And then if I'm directing, I'm like, my brain is so married to that show I'm directing. And so it just like fills every crevice that I just forget stuff. Pretty much everything out of Rika's mouth and Haganai was interesting. There were a couple of times where I was like, what am I doing with my life? I don't understand. She's awful in the best way. I'm trying to think. I get really excited when I get to say F-bombs. Like really excited. Because we don't get to do that very often. Normally the censors are like, no. I directed a show last season called Magical Girls Spec Ops Asuka, and they told me this was a new policy. So I was like, okay, you gave me permission, here we go. They're like, if it shows up in the translation, you can say it. And I was like, there's like I think there was like 12 F-bombs in that whole show. And it used to be you only get 2, like max. Like I don't care how many times it shows up in the Japanese, you only get 2, so choose wisely. Like choose where like it fits in the best. And I was like, so for Magical Girl Spec Ops, I was like, we're doing it, like let's go. So, you know, because I also know in the past fans have complained when FUNimation has, you know, chosen to censor like language or whatever, but I'm like, okay, well they're not going to accuse us of that in this show. There's way too much language. But yeah, so anytime we get that, I'm like, yes. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there have been so many. I voiced a character called Tomazo in Puzzle and Dragons, and like I loved him so much. He was my first mascot character, and everything that came out of his mouth was like super, super fun. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so bad at remembering. I need to make a list. Sorry.
So we've got less than 15 minutes, and Alexis will be doing a bonus autograph signing session right after this panel.
Yeah, so I will go right to my table after this. I wonder if this has been opened, because I would love some water.
My next guest, actually, but thanks very much.
Well, way to make a scene. I'm kidding. Bye. Oh, sweet nectar of life. Okay, yes. Oh, okay. Wait.
Go ahead. As far as going to conventions as part of your career, what qualities do you decide for you which conventions you go to, and are there any pet peeves or frustrations that going to conventions that frustrate you?
You guys are just looking for dirt, aren't you? I'm kidding. No, I have never turned down a convention that invited me except for one, and that the only reason I did that was because of scheduling conflicts. So conventions want to invite guests that they feel the fans will enjoy having there. So a lot of times when they're inviting guests, I do have a booking agent, so a lot of times it's kind of based on like what conventions does my booking agent have a business relationship with. And a lot of times it'll be like, hey, if you want this person, I also got all these people on my roster. So sometimes it's like a piggyback situation. But sometimes it's just, hey, if this convention keeps hearing from fans, like, we really want this person, they'll be like, well, I guess we got to invite that person. Because they're looking for what's going to sell tickets. You know, it's a business. So if there's an actor that you want to see, any actor, could be me, could not be me, that you want to see at an event, like, I highly, highly encourage you to reach out to that convention, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's on their forums, however they decide to handle this type of thing. And just say, like, I would really, really like it if you would invite this person. And if it's on Twitter, tag that actor, because me and a bunch of other people have our booking agent information, like, in our Twitter bio. So it's right there, super easy, very minimal work effort on their part. In terms of pet peeves, my biggest thing is just, I'm putting a lot of blind faith into conventions a lot. You know, I am having a stranger fly me out, pick me up from the airport, like, all this stuff, and especially with a booking agent now, like, there's a middleman, so, like, I am so far removed from this discussion, and I show up and I'm just like, hope they take care of me, hope I'm not stranded at the airport, hope I'm not, you know. So really, it's just, I just want, my biggest pet peeve is when conventions just don't hold up their end of the bargain. and this is not one of those events. This event has been great, but I have been to some events where it's like, hey, there's a contract and it says this and this and this and this, and you're not doing this and this and this and this. There was one convention that me and every other voice actor who was there, which was very ambitious. It was a first year. This convention no longer exists. First year, that was it. They got way too ambitious and invited about 12 actors. Some of them were really, really big, and didn't pay any of us, and didn't provide, that we didn't get a per diem for food, which was promised. There was no food provided. So we all went home. Like, we waited till the last day and we're like, I mean, the good news is it was in Texas, and so a lot of us drove, and so we had our cars, and there was an ice storm coming, so a lot of us were like, oh, we need to get on the road before we all die, or we get stranded here, which would be worse. And it just completely fell apart, and the programming was all weird, so no one knew where they were supposed to be, and like fans didn't know where to go, or they came here for this person. Well, they don't know where this person's going to be because that person doesn't know where they're going to be, and so it just fell apart. And they made the mistake of basically saying, oh, well, we were waiting. We promised you all these things, but we were waiting on ticket sales in order to give you those things. No, that's bad business. Like, no. You have all that up front. They couldn't pay they had an international guest that got stranded because they didn't have anybody to go pick them up. Like, it was a mess. It was just in shambles. Like, nothing that they said they were going to do happened. And a bunch of the vendors like sued, and they ran out of tickets to like physically give people. And it was just, think of every possible thing that could go wrong, it went wrong. So that is my pet peeve, when you didn't think it through. Because that's the thing, like, actors, we love going to conventions, but we are giving up work to be here. So this is part of our job. Like, there is money involved, and, because I had to give up 3 days of recording in order to come here. If I'm directing, I give up 3 days or 2 days or however many days in order to come here. That is money I am losing in order to come to these events. So obviously, like, it's very enjoyable, and it's a great way to meet you guys and like to give back and all that stuff too, but we are giving up work. So there has to be something to make up for it, to justify. And a lot of times the actors who don't go to a lot of conventions, it's because they are just not in a place where they can afford to give up work. So at the end of the day, it's a headache sometimes, like, and it sucks to mix business and fun sometimes, but it's a necessity, unfortunately. So yeah, but this event has been great. This event has been great. So I didn't want to make it sound like I was being like, yeah, those events. I'm kidding. No, this event has been great. He's my handler. He's taken very good care of me this weekend. Let's see, how are we doing now that I over-explained again? Okay. Who has not asked a question? You have not asked a question.
Have you seen any interesting cosplay at Anime North?
Oh my gosh. Okay, interesting. Is that like a loaded statement or just in general? Okay. Some people are like, have you seen any interesting? I did see a giant hedge walking around. That was interesting. I forget what her name is. It's a character in Black Clover. She's a witch, and she's got like the big green dress and like the pink hair and like the fabulous hat, and there's like peacock feathers everywhere. I forget what her name is, but someone was cosplaying as her, and she looked, yeah, I think so. Like, she looked incredible. She's got kind of like the markings under her eyes, and I don't think she like speaks with her mind. I don't think her mouth ever moves. I saw her. She was incredible. I'm always excited when I see cosplays of my characters that I voiced. So I saw Lupus Regina from Overlord. I have never seen a cosplay of her, like online or otherwise. That was exciting. I saw an Alisha cosplayer from Tales of Zestiria. That was so cool. What else did I see? I saw a lot of people like doing their own costumes, like just making up a character, and that was really cool. Yeah. There's so many people here. I tried to go in the vendor hall, and I was like, nope. That's the introverted part of me. I walked in, and I was like, too many people. This is overwhelming. Sensory overload. But no, I've seen some, like, I saw a night elf walking around. Her makeup and like her armor and everything was like on point. She was so cool. Yeah, like some really creative people here. I love it. Cosplay has come so far. Oh my God. Anybody else who has not asked a question? Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, it was recently announced that you're voicing a main character in this upcoming game called Trails of Cold Steel 3.
Yeah.
Do you recognize my cosplay?
I do. That's awesome. Yes.
So I just want to ask, what was your experience working with Lisa and the video game itself?
Oh my gosh. Well, that was a thing because I had never worked with that studio before. So when I went out there, I was like, I don't know these people, and it's really scary, and where am I going? And this is in Encino. I've never been to Encino. Like, it's in California or in LA, but I was like, I'm usually in Burbank. I walked in, and they have this giant room, and they're like, cool, you're gonna go in there. And this room is huge. Like, I'm used to small sound studios. I'm like, how do they soundproof this? It's enormous. And there was a microphone and my headset and then this giant television screen like mounted on the wall that had my script on it. And I was just like, okay, I'm like panicking, right? Because it's like my first time in the studio and I want to make a good impression. And I was like, I'm an idiot. Where are the headphones? Okay. Here's the mic. There's one cord. There's only one cord. Where are the headphones? And so finally I was like, because I don't know like where the director is. I'm like, where are the headphones? And then all of a sudden like the voice of God comes on from like an intercom and she's like, oh, we don't use headphones. I'm like, oh, I feel like an idiot. And she's like, oh, no, it's okay. She's like, I'm the stupid person who goes to other studios and doesn't put my headphones on. And they're like, who does this girl think she is? So she's like, it's okay. Because this studio was in this person's house. It was in like a mansion. And I was like, this is crazy. So of course they do a lot of stuff literally in-house. Thank you. I'm here all weekend. So after that, it was weird. I never recorded anything without headphones. It was very, very strange. And this room was so big that like with the air conditioner and everything, the room was really dry. And I was also nervous. So I kept having like smacky problems and she kept being like, take a drink of water, love. Take a drink of water. I'm like, I'm a fish. My mouth gets dry when I'm nervous. I'm sorry. And this woman, her name's Val, she is like amazing, but she no nonsense. Like I imagine a lot of people are like, well, I'm intimidated by her. A lot of people are really intimidated by her. And it was just like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Like, how much water should I drink? Like it's, but she was really sweet. And the clients that were there that worked in conjunction with the Japanese client were so sweet. They had dogs. They had studio doggos. It was really cute. They had Shelties, 3 of them. And one of them was like this old man. I was sitting on the floor. We were in between takes, and I was sitting on the floor. And all of a sudden, I hear this, and I like turn around, and there's this like old dog, this old Sheltie. And I was like, hi. And he's like he doesn't have teeth anymore, and he's like just this old man, and he's just like, and I was like. So that made me feel better. I was like, when in doubt, just focus on the dogs. Again, the introverted part of me. Find the pets. So, no, it was really fun. And Mise was really, really fun to voice act for. So if I were to go back to that studio again, I wouldn't be as nervous because, first time working with new people, it's always kind of a shot in the dark. And you're like, I don't know. But they were really, really cool. And that house was amazing. Oh, my God.
We've only got 2 minutes left.
2 minutes. I can do something. Yes.
Okay, I love anime with great character evolution. Has there ever been a character you've directed or when you've done yourself that had such an amazing character evolution that started as weak but then wound up becoming strong?
Oh, man. Yes, and I'm trying to think of examples. I directed a show called World End that just... Like, I don't care what language you watch it in, guys, just watch the show. It's so good. Just this, like, hidden gem that I don't think anybody even, like, knew about. But the arc of that entire show and the arc of all the characters, like, it was such a joy to direct. And, like, everyone, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but everyone I cast did such a good job. In terms of arcs, like, of characters I've played, Oh, I'm sure. I know there's so many. Reina, I mentioned Reina earlier. That was definitely an arc, definitely an evolution. You know, Hana in prison school was quite an arc. Because she starts off like level 5 crazy, and then by the end of it, we're like level 26 crazy. And this is on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's like, just, oh my gosh, just when you think she can't get crazier, there she goes. Maria and Maria the Virgin Witch was another one. She definitely goes on a journey. Yomi and Gare Zero, that was quite a journey. And those are my favorites, the characters that go on journeys, because that is just like an actor's delight. So it's a director's delight too. But yeah, I guess, did I do it? I did it, it's 4 o'clock, I didn't go over. You just gotta celebrate the little things, guys.